Hello to everyone who's watching this video. Today I'm going to show you some steps of a used car pre-purchase inspection and the most common sore spots of the Nissan Juke that require to pay particularly close attention. We'll check its identification numbers, body, frame, talk about potential engine and transmission issues, and finally we'll take it on a lift and inspect suspension, brakes and some other parts that you may spot only under the car. Juke, despite its controversial love-or-hate exterior, reached really impressive sales figures and exceeded 1 million manufactured units, so there are plenty of options to choose on a used car market. Juke in our video is 2012, UK made. Japanese ones are pretty much the same except of some minor details. And now let's move on to our inspection. First and foremost, we'll check identification numbers to make sure they correspond with those in the registration certificate and to exclude suspicious vehicles that may have a criminal history and fake numbers. This model has 3 easy access spots to check VIN. The first one is placed at the bottom left corner of the windscreen. The second is a label on the passenger side B-pillar for UK made ones and on the driver's side for Japanese. The third one, which is considered a primary chassis number, located under the hood, stamped on firewall panel. Check if there are any signs of repaint or repair of this body panel. In addition, we'll check if VIN corresponds with the engine, transmission type and trim level of the car using this website. It's free and doesn't require any registration. I'll put a link in the description. Now you can see information about the vehicle we are inspecting. Engine serial number is stamped on the cylinder block next to the starter. Let's get to the body inspection. Here we start to check panel gaps between adjacent body panels and look for any fitment issues. For instance, this gap between trunk lid, right tail light and bumper should be the same as on the left. Look at body panels from different angles. Sunny weather is an advantage for us today, so it's easy to compare color shades and paint textures to find out if there is any mismatch. Of course, it's important to remember that for a used car there is nothing wrong if body panels were repainted just to get rid of scratches or dents. This 8-year-old Juke has some chips on the hood, scratches and clear coat swirls. It needs to be polished, but all the body panels have no signs of repaint. Take a look at side mirror glass. Make sure there are no cracks. Inspect markings on each glass. Original ones are branded with Nissan mark at the top line. Digit 2 and 4 points after it at the bottom line of marking mean that the glass was manufactured in October 2012. Check mounting bolts and nuts of each external body panel for any sign of detachment or displacement. They may be detached to repaint or repair body panel, to replace it with a new one, or to align panel gaps after a collision. Inspect every door hinge as well as trunk lid and hood hinges. Manufacturer marked every front body panel with its name, like this stamped on the inner side of the hood or this on the fender, so you can easily find out if it's original part or car was repaired after frontal collision using aftermarket parts. Also, UK made Jukes have an air conditioner specification label on the inner side of the original hood. Those ones that were manufactured for North America have this label on top of the radiator grille. Wiring harnesses in the engine bay have labels containing production date information. Check frame parts at the front end of the car for any damage or signs of repair. Unirails, radiator support, strut towers, aprons and their welded joints. Take a look at the headlights. Original ones have Nissan mark. Sometimes little cracks appear on their surface due to a temperature difference. Often you may find them if the owner used headlight washer in severe frost or installed high-performance aftermarket bulbs. Also pay attention to the fog lights. Do they have any damage? There are 3 huge holes in the lower part of the front bumper that expose the condenser radiator, so it can be easily punched by rocks. Even a decent-sized cobblestone fits in there. So mesh grille like this one is a good option to install. To find out if there were any rear-end collisions in the past, pull out carpeted floor. Front-wheel drive models also have plastic tray underneath. quarter panel, floorboard and back panel spot welding joints should be untouched. Jukes body has a decent corrosion resistance, but in cold climate countries with salt and especially chemicals on the roads, some welded joints start to rust after several winters. Potentially corrosive spots are quarter panel and back panel joint near the tail light, bottom of the doors inside where sealing compound is applied, and inner side of the hood. For those who have a paint thickness gauge, I want to mention that the approximate factory paintwork thickness for Juke varies between 100 and 130 microns on external panels and between 50 and 80 microns for internal, like side pillars and rocker panels. So now it's time to talk about some mechanical aspects of used Jukes, and we'll start with two most popular engine options in our country: naturally aspirated 1.6 liter and a turbocharged one with the same displacement. I won't cover 1.5 diesel in this video because it's a rare engine option for Juke in our region, but if you want to know more about it, just let me know in the comments. I'll try to provide you with the detailed information. The first one this particular car is equipped with: naturally aspirated 1.6. Here you can see its description. The first issue this engine may have is often related to the driving style of the previous owner. If the engine operates only at idle or low RPMs, in course of time it causes piston ring scoking, which leads to oil consumption. And if not treated, eventually this kills a catalytic converter. The other smaller issues this engine also may have are throttle valve freeze while driving in cold weather, alternator belt gets loose and start making whistling noise, but overall it's a simple, reliable and quite durable engine. The second engine is from a different family. Although it has almost no any parts in common with the previously mentioned one, most of its description is the same. But what differentiates it is a turbocharger, direct injection and variable valve timing on both intake and exhaust camshafts. The first common issue is timing chain stretching. Mostly relates to Jukes made for the US market. There were a few chain revisions that increased durability of timing mechanism, but even vehicles with the latest ones still may have this problem. Stretched timing chain may reveal itself with a rattling noise from the front cover at the first seconds after a cold start. The second common problem: leaking fuel pressure sensor. There were several Nissan recalls issued to solve this. The third issue is a turbocharger failure, and it's often connected either with high mileage or improper maintenance and driving style of the previous owner. Roots of the problem are the same for almost every turbocharged engine: irregular oil change, use of low quality lubricants, stalling the engine immediately after driving at high RPM, which doesn't let the turbo to cool down. As a consequence, clogged oil feed tube, worn shaft bearings that lead to oil consumption and sluggish acceleration. Also, ask the owner what type of fuel he uses. For turbocharged direct injected engines, it's preferably to use premium to diminish the possibility of engine knock and fuel system issues. Now let's get to the transmission. There are two manual gearbox options: 5-speed for naturally aspirated Jukes and 6-speed for turbocharged ones. Both are quite reliable. All you have to do is change transmission fluid according to service intervals and replace a clutch kit when it wears out. There is no dual mass flywheel neither on naturally aspirated nor on a turbocharged 1.6, so no any additional expenses. One of the issues these gearboxes may have: shift stick mechanism gets loose in sideways movement over time. Second issue is not so common and relates only to 5-speed: noisy input shaft bearings. In most cases, transmission fluid change helps to eliminate the noise. 4-wheel drive is available only for models with CVT. There is no any coupled with manual. The whole system is reliable and requires only maintenance like transfer case fluid and rear diff fluid change. If you choose among automatic transmissions, there is no alternatives, only CVT. Let's talk about two CVT options and their sore spots. The first one is coupled only with 4-wheel drive turbocharged Jukes. It's pretty durable compared to many other CVTs, and you may find a variety of cars equipped with it. Problems with this CVT happen mostly due to the high mileage, but there are also three things that contribute to excessive wear of internal parts: aggressive driving style, overheating, and rare fluid and filter change that lead to fluid deterioration and contamination. The most common parts to replace are the following: flow control valve in the pump, input and output shaft bearings, CVT belt, friction clutch, step motor which adjusts gear ratio. The second CVT that are coupled with the rest of Jukes is different in design compared to the previous one. Early versions of this CVT were notorious for premature input shaft bearing failure and sun gear damage. By 2014, input shaft bearing and valve body solenoids were revised, sun gear welded joint was reinforced, CVT was reprogrammed, and overall reliability increased, but some failures still take place. The most common parts to replace, besides above mentioned, are the following: flow control valve in the pump, CVT belt, friction clutch, valve body solenoids, and sometimes valve body itself. One of the solutions that significantly increases durability of both CVTs is to install aftermarket auxiliary fluid cooler. Jukes for US market didn't have any external cooler at all. Most of the Jukes made for Europe have a small cooler from the factory. Nevertheless, a bigger aftermarket one for them is still a good option to install. Now let's get back to our vehicle and inspect the engine bay. Check battery charge indicator. Check both terminals for oxides. Brake fluid level. Is there any visible contamination? Pull out the oil dipstick. Check oil level. Dipstick should be clean without any sludge and varnish, as well as inner side of the oil filler cap and visible parts of the engine. This is a healthy looking one. Check coolant level. Inner side walls of the tank should be clean without any deposits on their surface. You can remove radiator filler cap only if the engine is completely cold, to avoid hot coolant spill and skin damage. Coolant shouldn't have oil film on its surface. Check if the alternator belt is worn out or has any cracks. Four-wheel drive models equipped with a CVT have a dipstick to check transmission fluid. Pull it out and make sure the fluid isn't contaminated and doesn't have burnt smell. Unfortunately, front-wheel drive models with CVT don't have a dipstick. There's just a plug instead. Inspect rims for damage. Tire tread wear. Also, don't forget about the date of production. Old tires, even having a decent tread depth, may be unsafe due to rubber deterioration, which leads to sidewall cracks. Thanks to high ground clearance, wheel well of this model is exposed, so it's easy to look if the front shock absorber dust cover damaged. Apron panel, unirail, and strut tower welded joints also clearly visible. One of the front suspension issues this car may have is strut mount bearing failure. While the car is on the ground, ask someone to turn the steering wheel while put your hand on the spring. If the bearing needs replacement, you'll feel a vibration on the spring. Inspect rear wheel well. Do rear shock absorbers have any leaks? Tailpipe shouldn't have excessive soot buildup, oily or emulsion surface. Now it's time to look at the interior. Check year of manufacturing on the seatbelt labels. Steering wheel leather isn't really durable, as well as manual transmission shift knob, which silver paint may significantly wear off even on low mileage cars. Get behind the wheel, turn the ignition on and check all indicators on the dashboard. Trip computer shows us a mileage left to the next maintenance and oil level. Airbag indicator should fade away separately from others in a few seconds. Start the engine. Pay attention, if the electric power steering doesn't engage immediately, but only after a few seconds, the cause may be in the battery that is not properly charged. Press the clutch pedal and shift between gears. All forward gears should engage with no resistance. Reverse gear doesn't have a synchro, so you may hear a little grinding noise engaging it. That's okay. Press the brake pedal and keep your foot on it. One of the issues Juke may have, master cylinder failure. In this case, pedal continues to go down slowly right to the floor. Listen to the engine noise. Pay attention if it has excessive vibration. Pull out the oil dipstick a little. Wipe vapor out of the tube may indicate a blown head gasket. Excessive crankcase gas pressure may indicate clogged PCV system or worn piston rings. Check all HVAC controls, airflow direction modes. fan speed. Also push AC button. If the system is properly charged with refrigerant, you'll hear the compressor engaging and see the engine RPM lowering for a second. When the temperature outside near the freezing point, sometimes you may hear squeaks while turning the steering wheel. This noise comes from the rubber steering rack seal and can be eliminated by cleaning it and spraying with the silicone grease. Some Jukes may have issues with the steering wheel buttons. The wiring harness gets damaged over time, and when you turn the steering wheel, buttons lose connection. When it's dark, you may notice the button backlight blinking. To reveal this problem during daylight hours, try to press volume or cruise control and speed limit buttons while turning the wheel. Also check onboard electric equipment. Interior lights, audio system, turn signals, headlights and tail lights, windscreen and headlight washers, windscreen wipers, rear washer and wiper, power windows, power mirrors adjustment and tilting, seat heaters. Finally, take a car for a test drive. Engine shouldn't stumble or hesitate under acceleration. If brake rotors were overheated and become warped, you may feel shudder on the brake pedal or notice a vibration on the steering wheel while braking hard. If the car equipped with CVT, it's better to test it in both cases, when the transmission is cold and then when it's warmed up. There shouldn't be any excessive humming sound or RPM fluctuations under acceleration. Drive on a bumpy and rough pavement. Listen if there are any knocking or squeaking sounds. Of course, it's necessary to perform a third-party inspection prior to purchase. So, now we'll take the car on the lift. Under the car, check for engine oil leaks, transmission fluid and coolant leaks. Also pay attention at the inner and outer CV joint boot, left and right steering rack boot. Do they have any damage? The Juke was built on a Renault-Nissan global platform designed for compact and subcompact cars. At the front, it's McPherson strut suspension, cheap and easy to repair. Everything is stamped steel, no aluminum parts. Ball joints are pressed into the lower control arm, so it's supposed to be replaced with the whole arm, but now there are aftermarket solutions to press in. One of the weakness spots is subframe carrier bushings, which again are not sold as a separate part, only as a part of subframe carrier. But workshops found a solution to modify bushings from other Nissan models. Engine mounts are another sore spot. On turbocharged Jukes, the first one to replace usually the upper right one, on the rest it's rear lower mount. If the exhaust noise under acceleration becomes too loud, one of the reasons in most cases is this exhaust pipe flange gasket. Okay, now moving to the back of the car, and here we can see the torsion beam rear end with a sway bar integrated in it, separated spring and shock. And again, like in the front, everything is simple, reliable and cheap to replace. On a four-wheel drive model, there is a multi-link rear and it's also quite durable. There is one thing I want to mention about the brakes. Like for many Japanese cars, both front and rear pads are prone to jam, which eventually leads to rotors overheating and warping. Especially this relates to the Jukes that are exploited in cold climate with salt and sand on the roads. To prevent this, it's recommended to wipe and grease caliper guide pins and clean caliper bracket at least once a year. Twice will be perfect. This maintenance can significantly prolong the life of rotors. And that's all for now. Hope you found some useful information in this video. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.